Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're getting into a really fascinating environmental project happening in Denmark,
We are the creation of a dedicated nature police.
or Nature Politi, as they're calling it. And for this, we're drawing on some great research from Kesser and Steen.
Right. For their nature and innovation class, they did a fantastic job looking at international models for this.
So what is this unit actually for?
Well, it's a huge policy shift. The goal is to crack down on what they call nature criminality.
Nature criminality.
Exactly. Things like illegal tree felling, organized poaching, killing endangered animals. Serious stuff.
And it has some real backing from groups like Danmarks Naturfredningsforening.
It does. But here's the detail that jumps out. The initial budget only allows for 12 full-time positions.
12 people.
Yeah.
For the whole country.
Mhm.
That immediately says to me this isn't about, a massive police force. It's about something else.
It's about specialized expertise.
So that's the big question, right? Why can't the existing police just enforce these laws now? Why do we need a whole new unit?
And that's where you hit the core structural problem. The police are part of the executive power, of course.
Right.
But historically, they've just lacked what the research calls an understanding for the green areas.
They're just not trained for it.
Not at all. And on the other side, you have the Nature Styrelsen, the environmental agency. They manage the land, but...
They have no teeth.
Right.
No enforcement power.
Precisely.
But the part of the research that really stood out to me was the barrier for citizens. I mean, it's almost absurd.
Oh, it is.
If you, the listener, see illegal dumping, the nature protection law makes it, almost impossible to complain as an individual.
It's a bureaucratic nightmare. You have to organize a large group of people.
And pay a fee, a significant one.
Exactly. It's a flaw that completely cripples any kind of local enforcement from the ground up.
So this new unit is meant to plug that gap, to make sure the new, stricter penalties actually mean something.
That's the idea.
Okay, so the Danish system for this is clearly broken. Where did Kesser and Steen's research suggest they look for a fix? Let's start with Norway.
Norway's model is called Statens Naturopsyn, or SNO.
And it's seen as very effective.
Very. It's a national supervision authority. And the key thing about it, its real innovation, is how it combines two roles.
Enforcement and guidance.
Enforcement and control on one hand, and public guidance and prevention on the other. It's both.
So they're not just writing tickets.
Oh, not at all. They monitor hunting and fishing. They manage predator populations, which is critical.
And they document illegal interventions. So they handle both the stick and the carrot, so to speak.
A very good way to put it. Now, if we shift gears, Italy offers a really different model.
Right, the Carabinieri Forstale.
A fully specialized police force. It's not a guidance agency that also enforces. It is law enforcement.
And it's part of a much bigger structure, right? The Command for Forest, Environment, and Food Security. CAFA.
Yes, and that integration is key. This came about in 2017 after they absorbed the old State Forestry Corps.
So what do they do on the ground?
They patrol national parks, they go after polluters, and critically, they are on the front lines fighting forest fires.
Wow, so this is a highly militarized, deeply integrated security force. A very different philosophy from Norway.
Completely. And it raises that important question, does combining guidance and enforcement, like Norway's SNO, maybe dilute the authority?
Or is a purely punitive force like the Carabinieri faster and better at stopping major violations cold?
That's the debate.
And from the looks of it, Danish policymakers seem to be aiming for something closer to the Norwegian model.
It seems so. A national authority that focuses on that blend of local guidance and real enforcement power. It's an approach built on specialized knowledge, not brute force.
Which brings us right back to the beginning.
The budget, 12 people.
Given that this whole vital new function is starting with just 12 positions, the success of the Danish Nature Politi is going to hinge completely on that organizational analysis they're expecting in early 2026.
It's everything. I mean, how critical is it that those 12 people are equipped with the deep, specialized expertise needed to interpret and enforce these complex environmental laws across an entire country?
12 specialists against nationwide nature crime. So the question for you to think about is this. When you're tackling massive environmental problems, does a small elite team focused on the complex interpretation of law offer better long-term protection
Then a larger, more integrated security force.
That's something to mull over as this unit moves from just a plan into a reality. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are taking a journey into the natural world, but we're looking at it through a really unconventional lens.
A very unconventional one. We're focusing on Højbjerg Skoven in Denmark's Lynæs Nature Park.
And our source material, it's not some dry academic study or a government report.
No, not at all. What we have is a collection of notes, personal observations, um, little bits of commentary gathered over a full year by two 11-year-old students, Kesser and Steen.
Right, and they're not just any kids. They cycle through this area all the time, and they're in this nature and innovation class, which means they're, well, they're trained to observe things closely.
They're highly attuned observers of their local ecosystem, and they see it being threatened.
That's the core of it. They're watching what they call the continuous push for building homes for even more people in lesser green areas, and they're documenting the fallout.
What's so powerful here is their tone.
Yeah.
It's sharp, it's impatient with bureaucracy, and it's deeply sarcastic.
It has to be, right? I mean, that sarcasm feels like a defense mechanism. It's what happens when you feel totally powerless against adult decisions that are, actively damaging your own future.
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to use their notes, their raw, on-the-ground observations as a shortcut.
A shortcut to understanding the bureaucratic inertia, the strategic negligence, and this massive disconnect between what's actually happening in nature and the policies being written somewhere in an office.
We're basically letting these two boys expose what the grown-ups are missing, or maybe what they don't want to see when they plan for the future.
So let's start where they start. They have this core philosophy, this foundation for all their observations. They call it the doctrine of interconnectedness.
It's a beautifully simple idea. They just state, very matter-of-factly, that nature is not set in frames.
And that's aimed squarely at the adults, at the administrators and developers.
Oh, completely. Because we love clean lines, don't we? We draw a boundary on a map and say, okay, the protected area ends right here.
As if nature just stops at the red line.
Exactly. But Kesser and Steen point out that the forest doesn't just, formally start at the parking lot or some signpost. They describe it as a sliding transition.
That's a perfect phrase, a sliding transition.
It is. In ecology, we'd call that an ecotone. It's that zone between two different communities, like the edge between a forest and a meadow.
And those zones are usually super important, right?
They're incredibly important, often more biodiverse than either ecosystem on its own, because you get species from both. The health of the whole system, the whole forest, depends on that messy, sliding edge.
So what the boys are seeing is that the bureaucracy, with its neat frames, completely misses the point.
It fails to capture the biological reality. A stream 10 miles away that's outside the protected frame can still kill all the fish fry inside the protected fjord.
Because everything is connected.
Everything is connected. The human markers, a road, a property line, they're just arbitrary. The boys see the system, but the bureaucracy only sees the map. And that's the central conflict.
And their observations, they're not just philosophical like this. They get into some really direct, almost brutal examples of that system being disrupted.
Yeah, let's get into the anecdote from Steen about the food chain. It's a perfect case study.
So he's tracking the top predators.
Right. He's talking about the great horned owl. It flies out over the landscape, and it's looking specifically for cormorant nests.
And he has this great line, owl chicks need dinner too. It's just pure, simple ecology.
It's the top of the food chain doing its job, regulating the populations below it. A predator needs prey, which feeds near the water. It's a natural, healthy balance.
But then, the human element intrudes.
And for the most trivial reason imaginable. New residents, city dwellers who've moved out for the view, they're literally sawing branches off the trees where the owl should be nesting.
They're destroying the habitat of an apex predator for a better line of sight.
For a better sunset. And
Yeah.
what I find so sharp about Steen's analysis is that he anticipates the common complaint.
Oh.
He says, yeah, fishermen complain that cormorants steal their fish.
But that's not the real issue here.
Not at all. He pivots straight to the real cost. It's about the new resident wanting to see the sunset with a glass of cool rosé wine.
That one image just says it all. This immediate, personal, aesthetic pleasure is being prioritized over the entire ecological function of the area.
It's what Steen calls a short-sighted thought process. And it's not abstract. You take away the owl's nesting site, you get more cormorants, you disrupt the balance. The direct consequence is fewer fish in the fjord down the line.
So the very people enjoying the rosé, who probably also enjoy the local fish, are unknowingly undermining the system that provides it.
Precisely. It's an economic choice that's disguised as an aesthetic one. A messy, functional forest with owls and cormorants is, an inconvenience, but a manicured view is valuable.
And to really drive home this point about nature's power when it's just left alone, they bring up a historical example.
The old allotment gardens, the Kalani Haver, this is such a great detail.
So these were highly managed, very human-centric plots of land.
Intensely cultivated. But at some point, there was a change. About half the little sheds were, as they put it, deported. The owners just moved their structure somewhere else.
And the ones that were left.
They were just left. The key phrase they use is grow till, to grow over. No more human intervention.
And the result is exactly what you'd expect.
It's textbook natural succession. Without the constant mowing and weeding and planting, the area has completely reverted. It looks like a forest now.
Which is fascinating because it shows how quickly nature reclaims a space. We're talking maybe a few decades.
And that's their point. If an area can become biologically indistinguishable from a forest in just a generation, how can anyone argue it's not a valuable ecosystem worth protecting?
The boys see resilience and intrinsic value.
And the developers see a blank slate,
Yeah.
an undeveloped piece of land just waiting for a new purpose. It really challenges our static definitions of what a forest is.
So we've seen the visible disruption sawing off branches, but they also get into something much more subtle, the invisible chemical damage.
Yes, the hidden threat of ochre. This is a brilliant observation because it's not obvious.
So what is it exactly?
Ochre formation is a chemical process. It happens when iron ions that are naturally in the soil change their oxidation state, usually when oxygen is introduced to waterlogged soil.
So like when construction work happens, digging drainage ditches, foundations.
Exactly. You disturb the water table, you expose that soil to air, and you get this reaction. Think of it like a rapid underwater rusting process.
And they can actually see this.
Sometimes, yeah. They mention seeing a bluish, sort of oily shimmer on the stream water. Other times it's more obvious. You get this reddish-brown sludge, iron oxide, that settles on the bottom.
And that sludge is the real problem.
That's the killer.
Yeah.
When that precipitate gets washed downstream into the fjord, it coats everything. The sand, the gravel, the exact places where fish lay their eggs.
So it's not poisoning them,
It's suffocating them. It creates a physical barrier. It kills the fish fry while they're still in their eggs before they even have a chance to hatch.
wow, it's a silent chemical catastrophe.
And it links right back to their central theme. Everything is connected. The damage might be caused by digging a trench miles upstream, but the effect is the death of an entire generation of fish in the fjord months later.
Which makes it almost impossible to pin on any one person or project. The cause and effect are separated by time and distance.
Which is why surface-level environmental checks are totally useless. You have to look at the whole watershed, the whole system. And that brings us to why these things are so hard to stop.
The systemic failures. This is where their cynicism really comes into focus.
Oh, absolutely. Kesser makes this point that when humans mix themselves violently in nature and break international rules, something is completely broken. The rules exist on paper.
But in practice?
In practice, they fail. And the number one reason they identify is the sheer weight of the bureaucracy.
They talk about how every case has to be tested locally first.
Which sounds democratic and reasonable, right? Local input. But, as the boys point out, it's a time trap. The whole process of reviews, hearings, appeals, it takes a very long time.
And this is where it gets really brutal. Kesser's observation that a new building is often finished.
Before the court can even rule on whether it was legal to build it in the first place.
It's a race, and the bulldozer always wins.
It's a practical legal loophole. The speed of development is, in effect, privileged over the slow, careful process of environmental law. By the time a judge says you can't do that, the damage is done. The concrete is poured.
And then the developer can just argue that tearing it down would cause even more economic harm.
Precisely. The legal remedy arrives as a moot point. It's what Kesser is lamenting when he says nature has lost, even though plants, animals had the right on their side.
So the law is there, but the procedure is designed to fail.
If justice arrives too late, it's not justice. The structure of the process itself becomes the problem. It basically gives developers a green light to build at risk, betting that the legal system can't catch up in time.
Which leads them to their latest source of outrage. They hear about another big area that's about to be cleared.
And this is where the frustration just boils over. Steen's reaction is so visceral. For F's sake, he says, they think they can just fence in the animals, as if it were a chicken yard.
That's such a great analogy. You can't just put a fence around a wild ecosystem and expect it to function.
You're treating wildlife like livestock. It shows a fundamental misunderstanding of how nature works. Migration patterns, food webs, they don't respect property lines.
And Kesser then connects this to the bigger national picture.
Which is so smart. He argues Denmark is very behind other EU countries on this because the nation's priority is massive agricultural production.
So nature is losing out not just to housing, but to industrial farming as well.
It's being squeezed from both sides, and this new area they're worried about is particularly tragic.
Because it's full of orchids.
Filled with orchids. Steen says it with this sense of disbelief. Orchids are often indicator species. Their presence means you have a complex, healthy, undisturbed ecosystem. It should be a giant red flag.
But they know how the game is played. Kesser immediately explains how the developers will get around it.
This is the really cynical and sadly accurate part, the strategic survey. He says they just do their so-called investigations at a time when they know they won't find anything.
It's due diligence as a weapon against conservation.
Exactly. He gives two perfect examples. First, the water salamander.
He asks, where are they in winter?
Hibernating. Buried in the mud. Impossible to find. So you do your survey in January, you write, no salamanders found on the report, and legally, you're in the clear.
Even though the place is crawling with them in June.
And he does the same for the orchids. When do they bloom? Not in the fall. So you survey when they're just dormant roots underground. The report says no protected species present.
It's a lie by omission. It's using the letter of the law to completely defy its spirit.
It turns environmental protection into a cynical, box-ticking exercise. The goal isn't to find out what's there and protect it. The goal is to create a paper trail that legally confirms its absence.
And this leads to these absurd mitigation efforts that are just for show.
It's a patty hen. The amphibian fence. Steen calls it ridiculous, and he's right.
So it was put up, supposedly, to help, to protect the amphibians during construction.
But the boys asked the simple, obvious questions. If this fence was helping, why did it trap the salamanders and prevent them from leaving the lake for 2 years?
And at the same time, it stopped the frogs and toads from returning to the lake to breed.
Also for 2 years. The solution became an ecological prison that completely shattered their life cycles. It's a policy designed to look good in a press release, not to achieve any actual conservation.
It's just there so someone can say, look, we did something.
And it gets worse. Kesser mentions the sand lizards, the markfurbin, another protected species. First, the official line is that they're not allowed on the construction site, which sounds protective. Then suddenly the story changes. The officials just claim there's nothing there to take care of. The lizards have conveniently vanished from the official record.
It's a complete contradiction. It just screams that there was pressure from somewhere to get that site cleared, no matter what the biological reality was.
The reports become political documents, not scientific ones.
And to top it all off, Steen has this final, brilliant piece of sarcasm, but it's not aimed at the developers this time.
No, it's for the local homeowners, the critics. He calls them the jammer tanter, the wailing ants.
And he calls out their hypocrisy. They're complaining now about invasive species that were growing faster than a runaway horse back when they were the ones responsible for the land.
So they neglected it for years, and now that a developer wants it, they're suddenly concerned environmentalists.
The most absurd part is that they're claiming native willow bushes are directly dangerous to nature.
It's a perfect observation about selective outrage. People get upset when their property values or their view is threatened. The boys see that a lot of adult concern for nature is really about aesthetics and money, not ecology.
Which brings us to what they see as the root cause of all this: power, ignorance, and the disconnect of the desk job.
This is the real heart of their critique. They ask this devastatingly simple question. What can two boys do when the adults in charge don't seem interested in the future of their own children and grandchildren?
They're calling them out for abandoning their most basic responsibility.
And they pinpoint two groups of adults who are failing. First, the political decision makers. They call them totally ignorant.
The elected officials who sign the papers but have probably never set foot on the land.
Right. And then second, the administrators of the rules, the experts. And they say this group is actively misleading the politicians.
That's a really important distinction. The politicians might be ignorant, but they're being fed bad or incomplete information by the people who are supposed to know better.
So you have this toxic combination. Ignorant leaders being advised by strategically biased administrators. And the result is this huge gap between the public facade and the private reality.
On the outside, everything has to look good. The press releases talk about sustainable development, environmental responsibility.
But behind the scenes, as they say, proves to be completely different. The reality is the dead fish and the trapped salamanders. But the public only sees the shiny facade.
And this is where they deliver their sharpest attack, aimed at the desk jockeys.
The professional class, the consultants, the regulators, the planners. They're absolutely scathing.
They say, sure, these people might have fine school papers. They have the degrees, they know the science, they know the law.
If they always sit behind a desk, that is the fatal flaw.
Their physical disconnect from the land is what allows all these loopholes to exist.
The boys ask, do they ever actually visit these places? And they answer their own question. Probably not. For these people, it's not a living ecosystem. It's a file on their computer. It's just a job.
And then Steen adds that final killer detail. He says they probably live somewhere else entirely.
And that's it, isn't it? That's the whole problem in one sentence. If you don't live there, if you don't have to look at the consequences of your decision every day, then the problem is just an abstraction. It's data.
There's no emotional cost, no personal stake in getting it right.
It's this huge tension between technical expertise on paper and real, on-the-ground knowledge. The boys are showing that true expertise in this field requires muddy boots. Without them, you're just pushing papers around.
So given that the boys are so focused on what really counts as a forest, these areas that have grown over, it feels important to actually look at how that's defined officially.
It's crucial because they claim international rules are being broken. So we need to know what those rules are, and there is a golden standard for this.
And that comes from the UN.
The UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, their definition is what's used for global forest statistics, including in Denmark, so it's the benchmark.
Okay, so let's break it down. What are the criteria?
There are a few key ones, and they line up almost perfectly with what the boys have been observing intuitively. The first is just area size.
How big does it have to be?
It has to be over half a hectare, so
Yeah.
about 1.2 acres. That's just to set a minimum scale, so we're not counting, a few trees in a park.
Makes sense. What's next?
Tree height potential. This is really important. The area has to have trees that can reach at least 5 meters in height when they're mature in that specific location.
So it's not about how tall they are now, but how tall they could get.
Exactly. That protects young, regenerating forests. It's about potential.
And the third one.
This is the big one for ecological function, crown cover. In Danish, lufttag. The canopy of the trees has to cover more than 10% of the area.
So that's what makes it feel like a forest, when the leaves start to create a roof.
Right. It's the point where the trees are dense enough to create their own microclimate underneath, cooler, more humid. It's what separates a forest from just a field with some trees in it.
And the definition is pretty broad otherwise, right?
Very. For statistical purposes, it includes things like Christmas tree plantations or areas that have been clear-cut but are expected to regrow as long as they meet those other criteria.
So when the boys look at the old allotment gardens that have grown over, they're seeing something that likely meets this international statistical definition of a forest.
Without a doubt. They're seeing the height potential, they're seeing the canopy cover developing, they're seeing a forest. But this is where it gets complicated.
Because the statistics are one thing and the local law is another.
Exactly. You have the FAO definition for counting, but then you have the Danish Skovloven, the Forest Act, which is about legal protection.
And what's the focus of that law?
It's much more about the forest's function and its future. It's not just asking, is this a forest now? It's asking, will this be kept as a functioning forest for the future? The legal obligation is to maintain a closed forest of high-stemmed trees.
So it's about permanence.
It's about continuity, and that's the loophole. The developers can argue that, yes, it might look like a forest now, but its legally designated future development is housing, and that can override the protection.
So an area can be a forest according to the boys, a forest according to the UN, but still not be protected because a local plan says it's destined to become something else.
And that's the tragedy. The two systems, statistical reality and legal protection, don't line up. And when there's pressure to build, the statistical reality loses.
So let's try to pull this all together. We started with the observations of two 11-year-olds. Cynical, sharp, unfiltered.
And through their eyes, we've basically mapped out a blueprint for a systemic failure. The fact that the speed of construction just steamrolls the slow pace of justice.
The huge gap between ticking a box on a form, the strategic survey, and actually caring for an ecosystem.
And this political process that seems to run on ignorance, while the ecological reality demands deep, local knowledge.
The boys just cut right through it all. When you have experts with fine school papers making decisions from a desk hundreds of miles away, you're not getting protection. You're getting destruction by proxy.
And this isn't just about one park in Denmark. This is for you, the listener, to think about wherever you are. This tension between housing, agriculture, slow bureaucracy, and strategic avoidance. It's everywhere.
It affects your water quality, your local biodiversity, everything.
Kesser and Steen gave us this really painful diagnosis. They said that in the end, nature loses, even when it was legally right.
So if the system is set up in a way that the side with the law on its side still loses, because of loopholes, because of procedure, because of the distance between the decision maker and the land,
Then the question we have to ask is, what kind of structural change is needed? What has to happen to make the system actually work for conservation?
if the problem is that the experts are too far away, what does that mean? What responsibility do people with fine school papers really have to the places they manage, and to the kids, like Kesser and Steen, that they're leaving behind?
Is knowledge, without presence, without muddy boots, actually expertise? Or is it just ignorance with a fancy degree? Something to think about.